There we go. How you doing, folks? Good evening. Welcome to the pre-show. Just getting ready, getting set up, and I think we're already all set up. So that gives us 3 minutes to bullshit, basically. And before the show starts live on the radio station, that is Odyssey, not Odyssey. See, rolls right off my tongue still. Say something every day for 3.5 years. And then switch right away at Subspace Radio. And that's subspace.radio.com if you want to just hear the audio. And, of course, you can hear the audio mixed with visual and a live chat room over at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. Oi, 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 oi. I should actually put that on the scroll bar. But if you're seeing this already, you're already here 9 times out of 10. So you don't need to see that. Hey, Unleash Jeremy Hansen. Who let the Jeremy Hansen out? Who? And Matthew Sainsbury, good to see you. Romeldian, good to see you. Thank you for the happy birthday. I appreciate that. And, well, unless it's Hillary or Nancy Pelosi, says Leslie. Exactly. Boy. And virtual happy birthday. Who said that? It scrolled away from me already. It's in there somewhere. Freaking birthday, Scotty Roberts. Dave Castle. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Field guy, good to see you. He's on fire. Look at the flames coming out of Field Guy. They're either burning you at the stake or you're on fire. Roger Rabbit, thank you, brother. Good to see you. An enjoyable and or productive day for you. It was a mellow day. I kind of deliberately took it easy today. I actually slept in, which was a first. I have felt better today than almost any day in the last 6 months. That's because I probably slept about 7 hours last night. Oh, we got to go live in 15 seconds. I'm going dark. Stay tuned.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Radio station, and when this show plays and when it repeats. And you can also join us in the simulcast, which you can find on my YouTube channel, Subspace's U channel, the Facebook channel, and also on the Intrepid Radio Facebook channel. And did you know the website's down there below, intrepidradio.com. You can go there and see. We've got a little site going. I'm going to be beefing it up. Go check it out sometime. Intrepidradio.com. It does not have a player on that site yet. I'm working up to getting that in there. And it's just always costs more money. Okay. Thank you, Dave Potter, for the ear signal. And sorry about that. Sound check. Check 1 2. Sorry, all those of you listening on the radio station. Yes, I did the thing that I have been known to do in the past, and probably at least once a week. And I left my mic ported down. You know what I need? I need to be like a movie star. I need to just sit in my chair and light my cigar and start talking while a producer or an engineer goes, "You're ready in 5, 4, 3," like that. And so I don't like having to do it all, but that's part of it, I guess. It's just part of what I do. So I want to welcome you to the program. I guess I can re-say everything I just said. So it was, hey, welcome. It's Wednesday night. It's Thanksgiving Eve. Welcome to the program, guys. And I'm Scotty Roberts, your host. If you don't know it's me, just know by the foibles I commit. And you can tell, oh, that's Scotty Roberts. Yeah, we got it. And so thank you, Dave Potter, Uncle Dave, for calling in, letting me know about my sound. And it's just right there. I don't know how. Like it's like having my kids clean up after themselves. You tell them every day. It's an everyday thing. Every day, every day, every day, every day. For the last 13 years. To 1, 2, and 3 kids over that course of time. And after a while, you ask, do you not see that thing there that you did? You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to pick that up and put it away. I still have one of my kids, maybe a couple of them. They'll get a candy bar or a Pop-Tart or what else? There was something else tonight. Sunflower seeds. Tear it open, pull the candy out or whatever it is, and they drop the wrapper on the floor. And I see them and I go, what are you doing? The garbage can is 8 feet away. I know it's a tough thing to walk over there, but that's like me looking at my soundboard and going, I know I've got to turn that up after the intro plays. Then the intro is done and I start talking and I forget to turn up the button. So am I as disconnected from my mute or not my mute, my sound button as my children are from picking up their wrappers? Maybe so. Maybe so. So anyway, we're here. It's Thanksgiving Eve, and I want to thank you all for coming. Not that there's big festivities that go on Thanksgiving Eve, but I know people who have family in town, and it gets really busy. So those of you who are here, I appreciate the fact that you're here and that you spend your time coming in here. Thank you for the birthday greetings, those of you who put them out there. And I need to look at the chat room more, too, because then I can see you wave me down if I'm going for a minute or so without. I have a message from Leslie. It's got to be about the sound. There it is. Yep. Thank you, Leslie, and everybody else that messages me and calls me. I appreciate it. Otherwise, you'd be listening to nothing right now. And so I had some other, I think, real gems of wisdom that I imparted during my time of silence for that minute and a half or 2 minutes, but now I don't remember what they were. So they must not have been too important. Now, I was talking to my mom who called me up. Was that this morning? This is how my days go. Was that this morning or yesterday? I think it was yesterday. And she called me up and just to wish me a happy birthday. Yeah, it was yesterday. Because she said, I'll remember every day up until the day of and then forget. So she said, I'm calling you now. That's the way I am, too. It must be a genetic thing, like the sound button. And so she called me up and I said, I was talking about the kids a little bit. And how are the kids doing? And so on. I said, well, and I went through, they're a little, Flynn is pubescent and weird. And Sam went through puberty too. I don't remember the weirdness. But Flynn's a little weird and he gets angry really easy. I'm not going to do the dishes. Well, son, it's your chore. I think you need to go out and do that. And by the way, it's not like doing dishes at a restaurant or something like where every other hour he's piled with 53 plates and 102 cups and pots and pans and silverware. No, we're a family of 5 and the rule is you got to wash your own dish. And so everybody washes their own dish. Well, not really. Mom and dad wash their own dish. The kids on occasion, it stacks up. And sometimes we leave him. If we're good and we just leave him for him to do. If he doesn't do them one day and we remind him, he loses a phone privilege or a game privilege, and tomorrow you have to do them all now, 2 days worth. When he could switch off with Rowan on those days. So anyway, all that to say, the things that we tell our kids every day, I don't even know where I was going with that story. I rabbit trailed so bad. Flynn sounds a lot like me, says Field Guy. Yeah, he could be that way. So, kids are kids. I get it. But, when I was talking to my mom, I said, I remember when we were kids, I said, we just did the dishes. We just did the chores. We were told to do them, and we did them. And my wife, Rainey, is of the mind that you got to walk your kids through this stuff. And I said, well, not after 3 years, 5 years, whatever. I expect that my children have a brain, and they're going to click in and say, I have got to do my chore. But no, children are all about, they will spend 10 times the effort and 5 times as much time trying to get out of or avoid having to do their chore than actually it takes to do it. I don't get that. I don't understand it. So, but my mom told me on the phone yesterday, she said, well, you remember what I did when you guys didn't do your chores? I said, yeah, I remember. My mom was a waitress. And single mom in her mid to late 20s, and depending on what period of time you're looking at. But she would usually get home between midnight and 1 o'clock. And she would come home. If we didn't do our chore, guess who got woken up out of bed? Yeah, this guy. And so, or my brother. And then my brother went off in the Marines. So when I was a junior and a senior in high school, my mom would, it was all me and my little sister. And so, we had different parenting styles. I haven't yet woken my kid up out of bed, but I've gone and grabbed him pretty late while he's still playing on his computer game when he's supposed to be sleeping. And I go, get out here and do your chore. And sometimes I do it with him. I go, come on, you got to get it done. I'll help you get it done. So, he's got some company, some camaraderie. My wife is like, you got to be out there and you got to watch them and keep on them to get them. I said, I don't have time. I don't have time to always ride my kids and make sure, hold their hand. Rainey's got a little different philosophy. And she treats it differently than I do. So we're incorporating the family meeting. Rainey and I were out in the garage today doing stuff, and I said, we got to do something about this. We've got to have a little more order about this. And so we're going to institute the family meeting. Have any of you did you grow up having family meetings? And it's not like, I have the spoon, I can talk. I'm not talking about that kind of family meeting, but family meeting where we sit down at the table. We talk about, okay, once a week at least. Once a week, let's figure out what we're doing. Let's figure out how to do it. This first one, now we've done these before, but they haven't stuck. You think it's going well and you kind of abandon it because you get busy with something else. Well, now we're going to reinstitute that. How many of you had those? And you grew up with those family meetings and you talked, you said, okay, here's the stuff we got to do. Here's stuff around the house. Here's this, here's that, here's the other thing, and blah, blah, blah. And how was school? So there you go. So we're going to start doing that. Let's see. Barbie D says, I just saw the word. Barbie D said, to Professor Bauer, I'll be oinking. I'm having ham. Ham? Barbie D, I love you. Ham on Thanksgiving is a sacrilege. You have to have turkey. Remember, Ben Franklin wanted the turkey as the national bird instead of the bald eagle. We got the bald eagle instead. Imagine what would have happened if we'd gotten the turkey. Would we all be eating bald eagle tomorrow? Hey, how is the bald eagle? Hey, it's bald eagle day. Gobble, gobble, or whatever sound an eagle makes. Did you stuff your bald eagle yet? It'd be an interesting flip-flop, wouldn't it? So dark meat turkey, please. I like dark meat. I like white meat too. So I love the bane to my existence as a kid putting on weight when I was younger. Things like the baked on skin of a broiled turkey. That was always the best, and my mom would season it just right, and it was great stuff. Screw turkey, ham is way more better. Yeah, it's for Christmas though. Come on, get your priorities right, Professor Bauer. Ham for ham's good. You know, ideally, what you do a turkey and a ham. Duh. And of course, if you're only like 2 or 3 people, that's a lot of food. But there you go. Yep, he saw the eagle as royalty, which America was breaking away from. There you go. So, so says Matthew. But none of this has anything to do with the topic that we're going to talk about tonight. You know, in a way it does. I said we're talking about birthdays and turkeys. And because it's my birthday today, everybody knows that. I'm not announcing it to get pats on the back or, oh, it's your birthday? Happy birthday. Where can I send the $10 so you can go buy a Starbucks coffee? Well, here, let me give you that address. No, I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm announcing it's my birthday because I want to talk about birthdays. It's my birthday. I'm 62 years old today. Now, my mom said yesterday, she said, I can't believe how old you're getting. I said, thanks, man. I got an older brother. He's 63. And my mom said, my mom just turned 80 this last summer. She still runs her own business. She's got a karaoke business. She did that up here 30 years ago. She started that. And she still does that down in Yuma, Arizona, where she's living. And so she was telling me all about her business. She still makes 80 look like the new 50, as far as I'm concerned. But she's busy and happy and doing what she does. And she said, I can't believe I have a son who's 62. She says, you're making me look old. She says, stop aging. I said, I'll do my best, Mom. I'll do my best. And it was interesting, you know, many years ago, we're talking 99 was, and some of you have heard this story, maybe all of you have. My mom was shot in the chest by her estranged husband at the time, 1999. And I was, that's when I was working in advertising. And he went on the lam and was a fugitive from the law. And so all these shows came in, and we started a website, Citizen Observer, to look for them. And then we also had all the talk shows wanted to talk to my mom. And they wanted to talk to me, too, because of Citizen Observer. So do you remember Sally Jesse Raphael? I don't even remember what kind of talk show host she was. I don't know if you think of her and you go, you know, or what, but she had my mom on her show and she wanted me to come along too. And so we were going to be on TV back in 99, 2000. And we were riding in the limo from the airport to the studio. And my mom looked over at me and I had the goatee and I had white hairs in my goatee. She goes, you're getting white in your goatee already. And I said, yeah. And what was I in 99? How old was I? I was 24 years ago. So I was, 40? Now it's 38, something like that, 37 or 38. And I was already getting gray flecks here, gray flecks in my temples. And she said, you need to shave your goatee. She says, your goatee makes me look old. So there you go. Now, my mom is only 18 years older than I am anyway. So I'm not far behind her. 18 or 19. She was born in 42, whatever the math is. See, now that would be 42. Yeah, that makes her 80, but I'm 62 now. So whatever. You can do the math for yourself. Ryan Gale says he remembers seeing me on TV. Oh, back then, Ryan, with all that junk? Yeah. Leslie said, I remember her talk show. Yeah, it was on WCCO, Channel 4, which is a neat station, but I don't like watching them. They're too far left for me. I can't stand them anymore. But they are a Minneapolis and a Minnesota staple. WCCO TV and radio. So anyway, that's about birthdays, about getting older. Um, and what I wanted to say, the only kind of lighthearted thing I was going to bring up about birthdays and turkeys was when I was growing up as a kid, and I've said this recently. I don't know if it was on Robertson with Wendy, or if it was on Kenny Ballos' Morning Coffee with KB, or somewhere. Maybe it was here. I said, when I was growing up and I was a kid, the whole world celebrated my birthday, because I never really was up on the date and all of that. All I knew was on my birthday, we celebrated it on Thanksgiving. And so my family, the whole family, would always come together for my birthday. And we had turkey and ham, Professor Bauer, too, because we had lots of people over. And I remember when I was a young kid, my mom was married to my sister's dad, who is Ukrainian. I've mentioned him before. And he's the first dad I remember. He married my mom when I was, probably a year and a half years old to 2 years, somewhere in there. And they were married until I was 6. But his name was Vasil Nikolajenko. And he was old world in his mannerisms and in his ways. And this was also when he was my stepdad. We're talking 1961-ish to 1965, 66. So you're talking the era where men got together with their families for a Thanksgiving dinner, and they all wore suits and ties. And so I remember Thanksgiving. I remember it for some reason in black and white. Maybe that's because back when I was that young, there was no color, as my kids like to say. But all the pictures that bring back those memories are all in black and white. And we all sat around the table. I look at these pictures, and we boys, we were all dressed in our white shirts and ties, the little skinny ties, and dress pants. We weren't dressed in tank tops and, scrubby clothes like everybody does in his sweatshirts and jeans. And no, that was the day, man. That's the way it was back then. And they're all sitting around. I saw one picture I remember seeing. You're looking at the dining room, and our house in those old pictures, to me, always looked a little old world European, the decor and everything, because my mom was married to an Eastern European. And but you look at these black and white pictures, and you would see the bright light coming in from outside. Dinner is obviously done. Everybody's drinking coffee out of the china, the good china, and they're all smoking in the house. But all the guys are in their suits, their crisp white shirts and their ties, and sitting back. I remember one with my stepdad. He's sitting back. He's got a cigarette like this. Uncle Boris. I had an Uncle Boris that was Ukrainian. I think he was my godfather. No, Uncle Leo was my godfather. But they all sat. Everybody's smoking in the house. So the picture's a little hazy with the bright light coming in from outside. It looked like a artistic photo, but something off a documentary, Matthew Sainsbury, exactly. So, although you were saying something different about a documentary. So that's my childhood. And when talking about birthdays and turkeys, the whole world, as far as I knew, celebrated Scotty's birthday by eating turkey, having cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, yams, or Ukrainian dishes of some kind. And that's the way it was. And it wasn't until I got a little older and realized, wait a minute. It's like first learning, okay, if you believe in Santa Claus, turn off the sound for a minute. It's like when you first learned that there was no Santa, and you had that moment, that flash of disillusionment. That's if your parents kept you innocent through all that, and you didn't just acquire it from the internet or school or some bully telling you you're a geek for believing there's a Santa Claus. But that was back in the day when I was a kid. It was like when you learned there was no Santa, you were like, oh, yeah, there is. And then And then somebody would always look at you, like your older brother or a cousin or something. They'd look at you and they go, think about it. And I remember one time with my twins, Abby and Bryn, they were about 5. And on Christmas morning, they're still in bed. Everybody's still in bed. My wife, their mom, and I were still in bed. And we were kind of talking. We had put out all the presents the night before. And I heard the girls talking at age 5 in the bedroom, their bedroom. And they're going, something's not right here. The wrapping, the paper wrapping, I saw a roll of that wrapping paper downstairs in the closet. Something's fishy. Do you think mom and dad are pretending there's a Santa? And this is the conversation. They're going back and forth with that, trying to figure it out, sort it out, muss it through. And then, of course, so we go, I better go get him. So we go get him and we go, hey, Merry Christmas. Oh, Santa came. And then they're all, in euphoria and they forget it all. But my daughters will tell me even today, we kind of figured it out right away at age 5. And Ellery said to me even today when we were driving around somewhere, she said, so when Santa does thus and so and doesn't, she had some question. And Ro looks at me like, I'm telling her. I go, don't you tell her. She's 7 going on 8. It's about that time. If she hasn't got it figured out already, she's just playing along because she loves it. So I think all my kids know that there is no Santa Claus. So I talk about all that stuff because we have these things that as we grow up as kids, we look at our birthdays, we look at our holidays, we look at all of this stuff, and we say there is a certain innocence that is there until that innocent bubble pops. And it doesn't have to be a tragic thing or a bad thing or a negative thing. Sometimes it's just, you take a helium balloon further up in the air. What happens to it? It shrinks. And I think that's what happens with us as individuals. We shrink. The older we get, our perceptions of things that were once fantasy for us shrink. And I don't want to play Mr. Miracle on 34th Street here, but folks, I hate to break it to you. There is no Santa, except the one you create. And one of these years, I'll actually grow my beard out and I'll play Santa Claus. I thought it would have to be, if I ever played Santa Claus for kids, it would have to be kind of a mix between Kurt Russell added a new twist on Santa Claus for me. He did pretty good in that, whatever the name of the movie was. He did 2 of them. But the first one, which was better than the second one, I thought he made a pretty cool Santa Claus. Also, there was the Scottish actor. I cannot remember his name for the life of me. If you remember the movie Braveheart, he was Hamish's father, the old Scot warrior, who got his hand cut off in battle. If you remember that scene. But he played, did they call him St. Nicholas in for heaven's sakes, Narnia, the Chronicles of Narnia, when that movie first came out, and he played a great looking Santa. He had this very Renaissance-y looking outfit on with the furs and the stuff and the big sleigh. I thought, so I would have to be, he wasn't William Wallace, Matthew. He played Hamish's father. I could see a cross between him and Kurt Russell. I would never play Santa and rent a Santa Claus suit. What a bunch of fake, phony, baloney bullshit is the red Santa Claus suit with the fake white ermine around it. Just fake as fake can be. I would look at that as a kid anymore and I'd go, that's Santa. We'd become too sophisticated. But I would do something very cool, I think. And I think Rainey would make a great Mrs. Claus. Giggity. But what do you got in that bag for me? So anyway, hey, Pearl Jones, Delaney, Carly Sagan, good to see you. And the magic of Santa will always be alive with Kinsey, she says. That's one special gift with her special needs. The pure joy and magic will always be in her eyes and soul. I hope she's not listening. So hopefully she's in bed sleeping. But let's see. Field Guy says, I want to see that Santa movie where he goes and takes out people on his naughty list like a vigilante. Was that the one with Billy Bob Thornton? Bad Santa or something like that? I don't know. Professor Bauer says, followed by the deaths of MLK and RFK, only the landing and walk of Apollo 11 and 69 stands out more in my mind, Matthew. Oh, something totally different. So, anyway, that's kind of what I'm thinking on how we grow up and we lose the need for those things. We lose the need for fantasy. Maybe that's not always a good thing. We can be in tune with the world and the universe around us. We can be awake. We can be intelligent. We can be responsible and all that and still hang on to some fantasy. At least, if nothing else, something that gets us through life. There's a little bit of fantasy in life. I still think there's still a chance that I can be a starship captain. So I'm holding on. Hopefully it'll happen before I'm too old. But I've got a few things here that I wanted to look at. I got 7 reasons why you should celebrate your birthday and getting older. Isn't that the thing that bothers us all the most? Now, let me amend that. I'm going to say we're all bothered by getting older. And invariably, somebody's going to step up and go, doesn't bother me at all. I'm good with getting older. What I mean by that is we all wish we had maybe the stamina, the physique, the mental capacity, the endurance level, the energy that we had when we were younger. And the older we get, that happens. I don't care how good a shape you're in. Generally, you wish you had a little more energy. Very few people that don't have that. And, you have to work a lifetime and set a lifestyle in order to be able to accomplish that. But we all wish for the younger days. But as the decades cruise by us at this uncomfortable rate of speed, did you ever stop counting your birthdays? Did you do it a long time ago? Do you dread getting older? Now, I don't dread getting older. I don't like it. I don't like it because, my skin isn't as flexible anymore. My wrinkles are deeper. My hip hurts more. My heart does, in my case. And also in my case, I'm shrinking. I've gone from 6 foot. I am now, I said to the nurse, when I was in the other day, I had to get a blood test done. And she said, we got to do your weight and height. My weight stayed stable. I'm still 20 pounds heavier than I went in for my heart surgery. So that's been stable for 6 years. I got to knock that off. But she did my height. And I go, how tall am I? And she goes, she actually said this, how tall do you think you are? I said, I've always been 6 foot. Now, I've talked about this before. I've already known I've shrunk a little bit. And she goes, well, you're just a little shorter than that. And I said, well, give it to me clear, nurse. I said, what am I? How tall am I? I can take it. And she said, well, you're like 11-ish. I said, 11-ish? She said, is that your final answer? She said, yeah. I said, I'll take it. I said, where'd that other inch go? Of course. And it's, so I'm 5'11" right now in my bare feet. But I've gone down from 6 foot in my bare feet. So I'm compressing. So all of those things happen. And we wish that as we grow older, maybe there's all these things we can do along the way to retain the youth. But we all want to stay young. We all want to have this youthfulness about us that is fleeting. What did Solomon say in the Old Testament? Was it Proverbs or was it Ecclesiastes? I think it was Proverbs, where he said, life is like the grass that withers and fades. Or it's like the flowers that sprout up in the morning and fade in the noonday sun. And because life goes so fast. But I want you to cheer up for a second on this. Take a little courage. The truth is that getting older is nothing to be feared. It's nothing to be rejected. We can't, first of all. In fact, there's so many reasons to believe that your life in your 60s and your 70s can be the best time of your life that it's incredible. Now, I look at that and I say, my 60s, I look at, say, pictures of myself from even 2 and 3 years ago, and I can see the aging on my face. I can see the aging in my body. I'm a little lucky in the sense, personally, I've got a bigger physique. I've got broad shoulders. I can still, I could go to the beach if I was in shape and do a beach body thing, maybe. But that's aging too. It's getting saggier. What's with the saggy? So age comes on, and we all know that. But our society in general fears getting old. I don't fear getting old. I don't fear dying. That doesn't mean I'm welcoming it. I'm like, hey, bring it on. Bring on age. Bring on the age and bring on the dying. I don't want that. I know it's coming. It's inevitable. And how long from now, I don't know yet. I'm pretty sure and pretty certain I'll die before my wife dies. I'm pretty sure my kids are going to be bereft of their dad someday. It's just nature. It's the way it is. And so you work to prepare everybody for that, and you prepare yourself mentally. But not many people would say that they're happy about getting older. In fact, aging is the unofficial curse of mankind. Benjamin Franklin again. The only certainty in life is death and taxes. And so over 500 years ago now, it was Ponce de Leon who started searching for the fabled fountain of youth. And today, the scientific community is filled with researchers spending millions, if not billions, of dollars trying to discover a biological fountain of youth. Is there a way to combat that? Why do we do this? Why do we pour that kind of effort and money into it? It's to extend our lives. Now, here's the big question. Do we fear death because we fear of what's beyond it? Do we fear death because we don't think there's anything beyond it, and this is our only shot at living the way we know it? I feel bad for skeptics, really diehard skeptics, because even if you don't believe in a God or an afterlife of that sort or any kind, you don't believe in reincarnation, you don't believe in anything, you believe in nothing. Well, maybe that's more atheistic than it is skeptical, but so the implications are clear that getting older is the ultimate enemy of humanity. Getting older because it brings us one step closer to death every day. Closer to death every day. And no one is going to argue that getting older is the reason to do a 24-hour happy dance. Nobody thinks it's the happiest thing in the world to get old. Your hair turns white, your skin turns saggy. It's harder to get a tan. It's harder to stay in shape. Boom, 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 boom. And so many of my friends remind me, each other, getting old isn't for wimps. And that's very true. And when your body's walked the planet for over 50 years, some things begin to fall apart. Some things don't work as well. Mystery pains appear. You see the doctors, you often start calling him by his first name because you see him so much. Doc, I got this thing over here. It's this pain here. And of course, my doc pulled the line on me. Well, then don't do that. I said, it hurts when I do this. He said, don't do that. I said, that's not even funny. And I call him Doc. I'm on a familiar basis with him. He's been my doc for about 10 years. And he's the one who breaks all the news to me that, hey, you're this is that and that is that. And so that's the one thing about aging that I don't like, is that things don't work the way they used to. And read between the lines, gentlemen. But, when we were 19, it's not the same as 62. It's like you got to put in an appointment to get a boner. Sorry, I said it, ladies. I hope you're all offended. But it's true. It just doesn't always work the same. Now, there are days, there are moments, guys, where we're like, yeah, I'm ready. And then there are days it's like, oh man, my hip hurts too much, you know? So there it is. And, that's kind of what it's all about for guys. And women, you've got your own kettle of fish, so to speak, to have to deal with getting older. My wife right now at 42, going on 43 years old, is starting to feel things that she thinks, am I premenopausal? She gets the hot flashes. Sometimes she gets the this, the that, the other thing. And she starts to worry. Am I getting, or not worry so much as like, do I have to start hunkering down for menopause now? I go, no, you got a lot of time. And I tell her she's too hot for menopause. You can tell how well that would go over. So we all face the point I'm making is we're all facing growing older. We all have birthdays, but I think we should celebrate getting older. In spite of all this junk I just talked about, do I celebrate getting older? Do you? At age 62, these are supposed to be some of the best days of my life. Supposedly. Well, they told me that when I was 35 too. You're in your prime. This is the best years of your life. Well, now that I'm older, it's 62. And let's get this straight. And I think all of you would agree with this in your own lives. I'm no Superman. I'm no superhero. My body bits start falling apart. There are things that start wearing out. And what we're doing is we're trying to, in a health conscious age, something even Grumpy Stack is working on with his new website and his new podcast he's working on, and his new mode of life is trying to extend and better the time that we have. I equated myself. Somebody said after my heart surgery, well, you're a superhero. I said, you're Superman. I said, no, I'm more like Iron Man. I said, I need something mechanical or I need surgeries to keep my heart working. So, I got to tell you, I haven't taken any hormone shots. I'm not taking testosterone. And I'm not trying to confuse the gods of aging by any means. And I have my shares of aches and pains. And I start to think naps are a really cool thing. Today is the first day in a long time I haven't had to take a nap. I didn't even feel it until maybe about a half an hour before this show. I was sitting and watching a show and I nodded off a bit and I go, no. I got to keep my energy up for the show. And so that's because I got a good night's sleep last night. How many of you, along with aging, suffer from a little insomnia? You know me. I go to bed about 12:30 at night every day. And my body wakes me up at 4 a.m. I try to sleep for another hour. At 5 a.m., I get up and have coffee. And then I go all day. And then I'll sit and have lunch with Rainey. And we'll sit on the sofa and watch news or something. And I nod off when I'm done eating. I nod off for an hour. And it's like Rainey said to me today, this is the first day I haven't seen you nod off. I said, yeah, I'm sprightly today. I'm feeling energy today. And probably because I got a good night's sleep. So, that on top of being in good health is that. So I think I can celebrate getting older because I'm nearing the top of the mountain, which gives me better perspective. Now, this is all a mental thing, not a physical thing. As the years go by, you gain a perspective that's not found in your younger years. The mystery of why things happened years ago start to clear up. Now I get it. And you're able to see how the pieces of life fit together much better. And using this thoughtful retrospection, the older you become, the more life makes sense and more it starts to fit together, even though you may have questions about things. I celebrate getting older because I care less and less about what people think. There's 7 things here. That's the first one. The older I get, the more I give a good goddamn about what people think. I will admit there are times that I go, oh, that person thinks that of me? Why? And I want to combat that. And then there's other times it's like, okay, you've stated your piece and you think that way. I'll let you take that. Go ahead. If that's where you are, I'm not going to fight you on that. But let me give you counter perspective. So we care less about what people think. Do you remember the days when the opinion of others became the primary influence on the decisions you made? The clothes you wore, the college you attended, how you cut your hair, and what kind of car you drove, and all depended on what others thought. But not anymore. Growing older rescues you from that kind of thinking. I celebrate getting older because I'm learning what's really important in life. In the formative years, life centered on building a career. Well, I'm still kind of in that. I'm still building things and trying to make things work in different ways in different areas. But I found myself putting career above family. When with every passing year, I learn more about what's really important. And I'm discovering life is all about relationships. Nothing is more important than your relationships. And I focus more of my attention on my wife now than I ever used to. And there are days where she says to me, "You're so detached from me," and I'm like, I'm not. I don't see that. Help me understand that. So, as somebody in this walk of life, this part of my life, I want to know, what am I doing that makes you feel that I'm detached? Because you are the focus of who I am, and I couldn't imagine a day without you. And I don't think I take you for granted. Help me understand. Help me do better. And so once again, you start to learn what's really important. I celebrate getting older because I'm realizing the need to make every day count. There was an old saying I used to use, and I used it when I was in ministry and youth pastoring, and I've used it throughout the years, on making days count. And that is this whole idea of the of the irreplaceable moments of time. Now, some of you may have heard this before. I've talked about it before in the past. It's not a news flash, but we all live with irreplaceable moments of time. And so what do you do with the time you have? As Gandalf might have said. Or it's not Pippin, it's not, it's not about life and how short it is, about what you do with it, with the time that you've been given. You think of Gandalf. But in a weird moment of self-discovery, while trying to decide what I was going to do next with my life, did I want to be an archaeologist? Did I want to write? Did I want to do art? What did I want to do? Or even what book I wanted to read next. I realized that my reading days were limited. If I read one book a month for the rest of my life, there might be only 250 more books to conquer before I either lost my mind or died. Time is running out. Every day has to be lived to the fullest, and every choice counts. This is why I quote that Mark Twain quote, and that's my mantra about the 20 years from now. I'll say it again, 20 years from now, you'll regret more the things you didn't do than the things you did do. So cast off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbor, set your sails to the trade winds, explore, dream, discover. This is what life is meant to be. And again, I'll repeat it again. This whole litany of things comes to mind. John Lennon, when he said, life is that thing that passes you by while you're waiting for it to happen. And all those little ditty types of phrases that we have, that we've learned over the years. And that's true. Life passes you by while you're waiting for it to happen. if you're just waiting for it to happen. You have to make it happen. And I think people die faster and age quicker when they sit and do nothing, hoping tomorrow's going to be better, without doing what they have to do to make it better. So I celebrate getting older because I'm realizing the need to make every day count. I'm convinced, as Captain Jean-Luc Picard said in one of the movies, was it the Star Trek First Contact? I think it was First Contact. He said, I'm convinced more than ever now that I have fewer years ahead than I have behind me. And when you become on that realization that I'm not being a naysayer, I'm not worried about death or anything like that, I just happen to know at my age, I've got fewer days ahead of me than I have behind me. And I celebrate getting older because I'm morphing into the role. Get this? Are you doing this? You're morphing into the role of a sage. In most cultures, older people are held in high esteem for good reason. Life is the ultimate educational institution. And the older you get, the more you learn. And as time goes by, you must remember this. A kiss is just a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. That came to mind. Sorry. As life goes by and as time goes by, you accumulate many life lessons to pass on to the next generation. And people begin to seek you out for wisdom and for guidance. It's not often I want to look to a very young person and ask for their wisdom. No offense to young people. I would rather look to the people who've been through a lot of life and they've learned some lessons. Grasshopper, as fast as you can, snatch the pebble from my hand. Any of you remember the series Kung Fu? Were you old enough to have watched that in the 1970s? John Carradine as Kwai Chang Caine. It was a great series, by the way. I enjoyed that. They always showed his flashbacks to the old masters that were teaching him to be a Shaolin priest. Grasshopper, walk the rice paper without leaving a mark, and when you can do so, you will be ready to leave us. You know, all of those. Master, I think it is time for a flashback. So people begin to seek you out for your wisdom and your guidance because you know something more than you knew before. I celebrate getting older because I get to see my kids grow up. I don't have any grandkids yet. I'm sure that's coming. One of the joys of aging is to watch the next generations grow into adulthood. Now, I am going to be the first to admit I miss my kids being little. They were so sweet and so pixie-ish and fairy-ish and the little laughs and the little voices and the tickles and the carrying two of my kids at once on my shoulders and walking around the park. And, now they're growing up way too fast. Ellie, my 7-year-old, my youngest, jumped on my shoulders while I was sitting. Where was I sitting? I was sitting on the edge of the bed this morning. She jumped up on my shoulders. I'm like, oh my God. Could you get any heavier? And she's a skinny, scrawny little kid. But at 7 going on 8, she's about 100 pounds. And I'm like, oh my God. Because she's tall and all of that. But one of the joys of aging is watching your kids grow up. And once in a while, I'm privileged to be part of that journey. And the older I become, the sweeter it is to have my moments that intersect with theirs. My kids that are out of my house. I was on talking on KB's morning show this morning. Morning Coffee with KB. And Sam called in. Sam the man. My young son, my young mini-me, my oldest son. And it was great just seeing him. It just my heart explodes when I see him. And it's great. I celebrate getting older because I have opportunity to work on, now get this one and hear me right on this. I have opportunity to work on my legacy. Do you ever think about that? Your legacy. At the close of every year, you've written another chapter, if you want to divide them up by years, another chapter in your autobiography. When you die, your legacy is the life that you've lived. Now's the time to work on your legacy. Live being awake and being aware of the legacy that you are creating. How will your kids remember you? How will they emulate you? How will they not want to be anything like you? What is the legacy you leave? I'm not happy with the burgeoning wrinkles. I'm not an overtly wrinkly man, but I got the crow's feet. I don't mind crow's feet. I got the browage. I don't mind any of that. I'm starting to get a little bit of the J. Edgar Hoover, or what do they call these? The extra skin here. Jowls. I hope I never get too jowly. But I'm not happy with the wrinkles. I'm not happy with the saggy skin. I'm going to work out more. It's harder now, too. I don't like the thinning hair thing at all. At all, as Andy Griffith would have said. I don't like the thinning hair at all. But I love getting older because it's a sweet time in life. You have to embrace it. You have to go ahead. You have to fall in love with getting older. What do you celebrate about getting older? How do you celebrate the years that you put behind you? What new perspectives about life have you gained in the years after 60? I only got 2 of those, but so maybe in the captain's cabin, which starts in just a couple of minutes, we'll be able to talk about that a little bit. And we'll share your ideas and we'll see where you're at. So all of this to say, happy birthday to me. I'm growing older. I don't feel older today than I did yesterday. I actually feel younger today than I did yesterday because I got sleep. But I know that those years are coming on. They're piling on. And I know the hair is pouring off the top of my head. And so there are the things about aging I don't like. There's things about aging I'm okay with. So you got to figure out for yourself what you're going to do with it. And for now, let's say goodnight to the radio audience. And all of you stick around for the captain's cabin. Live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey, we're back, but let me do this first. Well, mateys, welcome to the captain's cabin. Good to have you here in the after show. I was just looking as the opening was playing at what Chuck Thurston said. He said, through all the paranormal investigations, I've chatted with a lot of dead people. Death doesn't seem to bring much joy. Keep living as long as you can. And, thank you, Delaney. And, I agree with you to a certain point, but I have a theory and I wonder. The ghosts we encounter, Chuck especially, because you brought this up, the things that we encounter, the people we encounter when we're investigating the paranormal, are those people that are in a dark place? Does everybody who dies, do they have that? Or is everybody in just a dark place when they die? Or is it not a happy thing? Or are they happy? And let's put it in a, I'm trying to keep it neutral and I can't. Let's put it in a Christian context. Perhaps ghosts that linger on this planet are those who are not the, hear me out right here, the regenerated souls. Not those who have done their business with God, with Jesus, with whoever. I'm speaking strictly a Christian context, so let me keep that really clear. In a Christian context, you're not a Christian, you're not a, or if you're a Jew, you're not a Jew, a Muslim, you're not a Muslim, or practicing. So here's the big question: are the ghosts that we encounter the spirits of those people who didn't accept things when they were alive? And this is what their afterlife is. Do they have a negative afterlife to look forward to? Now, that goes against so much of what I think. But is there something like that or to that in different aspects? That when you die, is everybody going to come back as a ghost? Hey, I'm dead. I'm a ghost now. Even the people that I knew, some of them, one in particular, that was my mentor when I was a kid, who was very Christian. He got me into my Christian faith. But even he appeared to me through a medium. And this medium pulled up all kinds of facts about him they didn't know him at all. And I talked about this the other day, or not long ago. And so this person identified himself through things that only I would recognize. And at the same time, he said, through the medium, he says, and by the way, the mediums were Michael and Marty Perry. You've seen them, a couple. They've been many times on Ghost Adventures. And so you've seen a lot of that. And maybe a lot of them. But, and I've grown to trust them really well. And this is one of the first encounters I'd had with them 12, 13 years ago. And they came up with this mentor of mine. And he said, do you have any questions? He's British. He said, do you have any questions you'd like to ask him? And I just said, well, what are you experiencing over there? Because he was very much a diehard, very conservative, fundamentalist Baptist Christian. And he came back through the medium, Michael, he said, I'm doing very well. I'm very proud of you. And it's very different over here than what I thought it was going to be. And that's all he was told. And I've heard that from other mediums and other situations. By the way, if you think I don't go storming into finding mediums all over the place, but I will tell you this, is that in the line of work I've been in, ever since my days with TAPS Paramag and the Ghost Hunters to my own Intrepid magazine, which launched Intrepid Radio back in 2011. And the paranormal investigating I do and all of that has always had me surrounded by people that are mediums or in mediumship or clairsentient, clairvoyant, whatever. And so I've got a lot of people who will contact me out of the blue and say, hey, I would love to do a reading for you. I'm like, sure, have at. Let's see what you got. And sometimes they come up with some pretty incredible information. Other times it's so general, I'm like, well, if you've heard me talk at any time over the last 20 years, you could probably have gleaned that information pretty easily. So, and it's kind of like we got Sterling hanging in the wings. I'm going to bring you in a minute here, Sterling. But Sterling's a question that he asks. I think it's a hypothetical question, but that question of my great grandfather could fly. And so we have that same question with all of this stuff, with spirits that we encounter. They're all things we don't really know. We could say we want to believe them and maybe believe that it's possible, but we have no proof. And that's where I get left with a lot of that. So, and Sterling, I wasn't making that point just because you were there. You just happened to pop in as I'm talking about this. So we've also got Professor Bauer hanging in the wings. So let's bring you gentlemen in. Here we got Sterling, and here we got Professor Bauer. How you guys doing tonight?
Thanks for having me.
Sure thing,
Doing
Sterling.
outstanding. I bring you good tidings of glad
Good tidings
joy
of great
and
joy.
wonderfulness on this season of giving and being thanks for being able to give.
Well, that reminds me, what you were just saying reminds me of Linus from the Peanuts Christmas special when I was a kid in the 60s. Well, that's not what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown. Christmas is about, and lo, the angel of the Lord came and did appear, and joyous good countings of great deeds, and so on and so forth. So you just reminded me of something from my past that I'm ambivalent to, Peanuts. so anyway.
Well, to your point about the spirits and people and the iterative, what I refer to as the iteration process as opposed to reincarnation. It seems
Carly Sagan, sorry, Professor.
That's all right. It seems to me that there's all kinds of, when you know, and to what Sterling was talking about Monday night about using the scientific method and having qualitative and quantitative methodologies to determine whatever it is that you're looking at. One of the interesting things about all of these different souls and ghosts and so forth that I throw into the equation and see what it does to it is there are apparently more people on the planet now than there ever has been.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Where do they come from? Where, if everybody has a soul,
if everybody's recycled,
well, I think that the recycling or iterative process is something that happens as a part of the nature of the cosmos, which is, you know, again, in my view, it's all consciousness.
It just doesn't anyway. Scientifically, you could say it doesn't matter. Matter is reused. Whether it retains memory is the big question we have with.
Well, that goes into
how I boil it down for reincarnation.
That goes into things like Sheldrake's morphic resonance theory, which I think makes a hell of a lot of sense, because I think when you think about where are our memories, where are they stored? How do we have them? Well, science has not been able to find it anywhere in the brain. They can't slice and dice it. They can find different anomalies that happen in different frequencies and different energies, but nobody's been able to find a memory, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of go back to, you know, at the end of the day, Richard Feynman's had some just brilliant perspectives on things. And one of them is that I'd rather have
doubts,
questions that can't be answered rather than answers that can't be questioned, right?
Yes. I like what he said on that, by the way. I love the way he said it at the end of that quote. And it might have been two different times he spoke about this, but he said something like, if you ever hear him, he's got that classic Jewish New York, you know, accent.
Yeah.
And he says, for me, he says, to doubt, he says, is part of my life. He says, I doubt everything. And he says, I would rather die not knowing than die and realize I believe the wrong thing all the way along.
Yeah, and one of his other ones,
not knowing things.
One of his other ones that I think is very appropriate is, he says, I have approximate answers and possible beliefs and different degrees of uncertainty about different things.
Yes,
but I am not absolutely sure of
about anything. I love that quote of his. By the way, I had to put this up. Our old neighbors, Brianna and John Learman, and she says, "Happy birthday, Pops." There's nothing better at my age when you're trying to hang on to the tendrils of your virility that a hot young woman says, "Happy birthday, Pops." There's nothing better for the soul when you're getting old than that.
Amen.
But I understand. Thank you, Brianna. I appreciate that. Got to talk to you and John because we want to do a little Thanksgiving celebration at our house sometime over the next Thanks Christmas type of thing. But we'll talk to you guys about that. I just thought I'd put that out there in public before I forget, because I'm old and I forget like that. Oh, sorry. Happy birthday, Daddy.
Oh, who's your daddy?
I'm sure I told this story before, but I know Brianna knows it. But at the festival, when I did Renaissance Festival, and we were all Royal Guard, we were the Beef Eaters. One of my first things out there, we're talking 30 years ago. And there was one pretty young thing that couldn't have been a lick over 18 that wore one of those leather kind of suede, like Tarzan outfits, like Tarzan bikini. And then the big leather boots that go with it. She looked like, I don't know, Raquel Welch from 1 million BC or whatever it was. But every day when we would march by as the Royal Guard, when we weren't guarding the king and walking him around, in all theater, of course, folks, street theater, she would always run out from one of these booths and she'd run over to me yelling, "Daddy!" And then she'd jump into my arms. And for the theater part, we're in formation. We're military. We're King's Guard. And the captain of the guard, he would always yell at me and he had his little breaking voice thing, and he'd go, my character's name was Martin Frobisher. He'd go, "Frobisher!" And because the woman would jump into my arms. And he says, "Haven't you ever seen a woman before?" And I said, "Yes, Captain, I have, just not this one." And then he goes, and then the whole thing with her calling me Daddy, and he goes, "Ha, Frobisher, she called you Daddy." And I'm holding her like this. She's this waif of a woman, and she's got her arms around my neck, and she turns and she looks at him, and she says, "I didn't call him Daddy. I called him Daddy." And I'm like, "Thank you very much. I appreciate that." So I'll take that, Brianna, that long way around my elbow to get to my nose to say that about Brianna's comment. Anyway, Sterling, what did you have to say? You had some things you want to say.
Thanks for having me. Sorry
Thanks for being here.
Sorry for coming in so hot. I have no excuse.
It's all right.
But if we could move on. Babies, where do they come from? I think that question was posed. I heard that.
Yeah.
They come from their parents having coitus.
I think it's more the souls, talking about not so much the babies, the physical fetus and the baby and all that, but the soul, is there something to that? What do you think about that?
Well, thank you for clarifying, because to ask where the souls come from, you'd have to first demonstrate that there is such a thing. Yeah?
That's true. That's true.
For it to be a fair question, for it not to be a loaded question, you'd have to ask, is there such thing as a soul? And then where did those come from? Yep. But until you prove it, really to speculate where they come from doesn't really make sense to me. Where are our memories? Yeah. They've never shown us a memory.
Where do we store them? Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Where do you store them? Where's the little box in your brain where they're kept?
Your brain is the box, or your cranium, your skull is the box that holds the brain, that holds the memories. I don't think that memories are a material thing. You can extract them and put them over there on the desk. But I have seen studies where they can monitor what your dreams were and almost see the images. Yeah. That you saw in your dreams. And that's sort of like a memory. But again, we're not looking for a memory as if it's a safe in the bank that we want to break into. Yeah. It's not going to be just like that. Just like our thoughts aren't material things, I think it's not honest to say, well, then where are the memories? And I'm not even sure. Anyway,
Can I ask you something on that, Sterling?
one more. I'm sorry, Professor. Yeah. Questions. I'd rather have questions that can't be answered. Let me make sure I got this right. Mm-hmm. Rather than answers that can't be questioned. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a good Feynman quote.
You know who Feynman was?
But not an original with Feynman, just a good quote of his.
To me, that's a false dichotomy. Yeah, because I don't want either one of those things. I don't want to choose between those things. I don't want questions that can't be answered, and then it almost implies that, hey, you have answers. You allege that you have answers that can't be questioned. When I would never say that. I can always question.
If I can interject, I know listening to Feynman, he made a lot of these comments back in the 60s and the 70s. He was, you know who Richard Feynman was? He was a contemporary of Oppenheimer and Einstein. He was a
theoretical physicist.
A theoretical physicist. I was going to say astrophysicist, theoretical physicist. And he said, what I like about what he says when he makes that comment or that phrase, I'd rather not know everything than how's it go? I'm going blank on the phrase. Anyway, you know the phrase.
Questions that can't be answered, answers
right.
that can't be questioned.
I get what he's saying there. He's saying, and I've heard him say this wrapped around that thought, is that he says, look, he says, and Professor Bauer quoted him in one of his quotes. He says, I've got approximations and guesses and some things that I've determined that are totally fact. I've got all of these things going on for me. He says, my job is to doubt things and to ask questions and to seek answers. And he said, that's where he made that statement. He says, I'd rather die not knowing the answers than die and find out everything I thought I knew was wrong.
Well, if you read Feynman's, a lot of the works and things that he had written about, being a theoretical physicist, this is where you get into quantum mechanics and quantum physics and all of the latest current scientific philosophies. Okay. Because all they are is a set of equations trying to essentially, if you really think about it, they're essentially trying to put math and equations to metaphysics, to things that have been known and studied throughout the millennia by all kinds of different cultures. And so he came to those positions about questions that can't be answered because of the scientific method, because of his work in science, trying to define and come up with formula that define the universe. So, as an example, questions that can't be, or answers that can't be questioned. What did Galileo do?
Right.
The answers that before Galileo did his work was that the Earth, that the sun rotated around the Earth, and all the planets were rotating around the Earth.
And of course, that was, as we all know, that wasn't a scientific determination. It was a determination based on
it was
religion or faith or belief.
No, there was scientific observation. I mean, for example, if we didn't know that the Earth rotated around the sun versus the sun rotating around the Earth, if we didn't know that now, our ability to observe, to make observations and make that determination could easily come up with, well, no, everything rotates around the Earth. I mean, you don't, until we had math and equations and the scientific method, there wasn't a way to, and especially with Newton and even Descartes and, the guys that really founded what we currently have in our scientific systems. Before that, as I think I was saying the other night, when you think about consciousness, the Greeks, Pythagoras, Plato, all these guys, everybody, the thought and the theory was that the entire universe was conscious. It was alive. The sun had a soul, Earth had a soul, stars and planets and galaxies and everything has a mind about it because it comes from the mind. This is what panpsychism is making a resurgence.
By the mind, are you talking about consciousness?
Consciousness, yeah.
All right.
Your mind is not in your brain. It's not in your physical brain. Your mind is a separate energetic frequency set that comes from consciousness, which creates the universe. Okay.
Okay.
So that explains to me all the things that you see as far as, the soul and all of the components of the way that we observe energy. But one thing that we, at least in the current science models, there is no definition of what a field is. Just like there's a definition of what electricity and gravity is, but there's nothing that has proven that that's what they are. In fact, there's some fascinating research done on electromagnetic fields and the electromagnetic nature of the universe. And that explains more of what we observe, both with the telemetry toys that we've come up with in the different spectrums, ultraviolet versus infrared, all of the different sound spectrums. We only pick up a small amount of what's actually there. So it makes sense to me that if you have answers that need to be questioned or should be questioned, then one of the things that we really need to do is question the current answers that we've gotten from the science that's currently there, because they don't have answers to any of the things that we're talking about, which are essentially metaphysical in the traditional category.
Well, I've just
there
thrown
is
up
no
this,
definition of consciousness. It's known as the hard question.
Right. Oh, I just put up this post from Chuck in the chat room. He says, LOL, science answers is subject to the known and proven truth until it's proven wrong.
That's right.
And that's right. There's something about that, though, that makes me bristle a bit. And what makes me bristle is that idea that we're right until you prove me wrong. Well, there's that element of it. Now, of course, science will say we figured out what we breathe scientifically. We know what makes oxygen. Until we're proven different, that it might be something else, that's what we're going with what we can prove scientifically. I get that point. There's also the I wrote a chapter in one of my own books. I think I have it here. I just want to get the words right. In my book on the Nephilim, the rise and fall of the Nephilim. This came out 12 years ago or 10 years ago, and in 2012. And I had one of the first chapters in this book. I wanted to get rid of that notion that we only can rely on science to prove anything. And I called the chapter Science Almighty. And here, hold on. I want you to get the idea here by telling you what I said at the very beginning of this. I'm sorry. And I put in these quotes, one by Henry, I've never pronounced his name right, Poincare, Poincare, with the, not an umlaut, but the hyphen over the top. Science is built up of facts as a house is built of stones. But an accumulation of facts is no more a science than a heap of stones is a house. And I said, so I have this pile of stones, I wrote. And this is my thinking, and this comes to mind, so there's something in here I got to share, I think. So I have this pile of stones, each one representing a scientific fact that could be used to build a solid foundation for what I'll call the house of the origins of humanity, which is what I was talking about at the beginnings of this book. Yet there remains an unconstructed heap or an unstructured heap, because although each stone may be individually factual, they can be loosely mortared together only by hypothesis built on the presupposition that humans evolved from lesser forms of primates, who in turn evolved from emergent aquatic species, who themselves evolved from primordial slime. Now, I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek with this because I'm not coming across in this book saying I disbelieve or I have no faith in the science. I got a kid upstairs on a flute or something. That's weird. I thought I started hearing flute music, and I thought, oh, I'm passing into Neverland now. So these individual facts might be comprised of my pile of stones. They cannot construct an unshakable foundation, for they lack concrete coherence. So the house remains in the architectural phase. And we know where we want to put the stones. We're just not yet sure how they all fit together. And so that would be my take on this, is that although I say a little bit later, hold on, this might be pertinent. Science as we know it is defined as a branch of knowledge or study of the physical or material world, dealing with a body of facts and or truths systematically arranged, showing the operation of general laws gained through observation and experimentation, reflecting a precise application of said fact and or principles. Science is also the observation, identification, description, experimental investigation, and theoretical explanation of phenomena, restricted to a class of natural phenomena. And although science is continually uncovering facts as to variant species that on a hypothetical level demonstrate a mutation within the species, they still lack that definitive link that results in the exclamation of Eureka! Now, this does not nullify the facts, the metaphoric pile of stones, but it certainly wreaks havoc with the proposed hypothesis. Now, my whole point in this 10 years ago when I wrote that, 11 when I wrote it, was when I was talking about, say, the origin of species. I say it's interesting that we have all these stages of evolution, but we have nothing in between. We have no DNA. We have no this, no that, nothing that combines all of these. And the point I was making with this in particular was that the origin of species, it may be exactly what Darwinism brought across to us, but you can't prove it. You can prove that maybe different stages existed, but you can't prove the connections. There's no connectivity, and this is the missing links they keep talking about. Link, hence the word link. And so I think this is a little bit of what we're talking about with all of this, with great-great-great-great-grandfathers flying across the Grand Canyon, or whatever it might be, ghosts, spirits, those things. I would say I have accumulated an abundance of evidence that something outside human life exists. I've experienced it. I've spoken with it, and I'm not a weirdo, by the way. I'm not a druggie or anything. Like, oh man, you talk to me. It's
well, you might want to try some DMT.
I might want to try that sometime.
A little ayahuasca.
So yeah, a little ayahuasca. Yeah. Sterling, you speak like a man who has experience or something. No.
Well, ayahuasca, of course, can cause a lot of nausea and vomiting that DMT,
so I've heard.
DMT can bypass. So out of the two,
I don't like puking, so.
No. Even if you do want to see little green men at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
The heliocentric model, what we have now, replaced the model that said that the Earth was the center of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I agree with the professor, that original theory was based on evidence.
Mm-hmm.
It was based on science. It was the best evidence in science that we had at the time. And any time that one theory, one fact, whatever you want to call it for right now, gets replaced with another one that's accurate, is because that we used science to get that new understanding, a better science. And you'd be a fool to claim that the science now has led us to the fact that's absolutely proven to be true. What science doesn't do, they don't set out to prove things. And that's why people will attack things as a theory, such as gravity, electricity, as if these things, by being called a theory, and being humble enough to say that we don't know it for a fact, and being humble enough to say that, yeah, I don't want questions that can't be answered, but at the same time, I don't claim to have answers that can't be questioned. That's not a part of it. Because you have, anytime you put a theory out there in a peer-reviewed journal and you show your peers exactly how you came to the conclusion, They can test it for themselves. That's the point of putting it out there. And that's what happens in these peer-reviewed journals, is that other people test it, and either they demonstrate it for themselves with the same conclusions, or they say, hey, look, this doesn't add up over here.
Right.
So
Sterling, are you aware that there's been a study on the peer-reviewed process, and at least 60% of the scientific papers that are put in, regardless of the journal, cannot be reproduced?
Thank you, Professor. I am aware of that. And what I would say is that you just proved not your point, but more so mine. And hear me out, because that's science that led to that 60%. That's science, better science than what was originally put out. So it is.
Well, the only issue that I'll add into that is that this study has been done decades after all of this peer-reviewed research had been published. In other words, it wasn't a regular part of the process of vetting the scientific documents and articles and theories and hypotheses that were published. It was something that was done recently after decades of content has been accumulated in these articles published in these for peer review. And when they looked back at all of this, at least 60% of it could not be reproduced.
Well,
yet when you look at it, you'll find that a majority of our science that we use today in the way that we conduct things is based off of a shitload of that stuff that couldn't be vetted.
Sure.
So that's where the danger of science, where it's become scientism for the most part.
Yeah.
Okay.
Science
has become more of a belief system now because of its nature of what it has produced in our technology.
Now, I have said, and
you can find this research all over the place.
I said in my books, and I've said this many times, is that science has become a surrogate for religion.
Exactly.
Now
it's the secular religion.
It's the secular religion. It is the one that says there is nothing else except what I can prove to you.
That's right.
I think that there are many things that I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but maybe all of us sitting here having this conversation would agree that there are things that cannot be proven. There are some veils that cannot be pierced. There's not a one of us sitting here that's been beyond death and come back to tell about it. So there are things we don't know. There's veils we don't know. We can explain scientifically that life ends in a physical form. We can't explain anything beyond that. But
we can't explain anything before that either.
Or before that.
Right. So
where does it come
goes
from?
Back to the point I was making earlier about we've supposedly hit this 8 billion mark of people. The majority of that population has occurred in the last 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We've had this exponential growth of all these carbon-based meat sacks just showing up all over the place. Where did they come from? If there is a soul and a spirit, which I think they're the words that are currently used to define.
That's the prerequisite you're going on. And by the way, Sterling, which you might have missed in what he was saying earlier, talking about the soul. Where does the soul come from? They were presupposing there is that.
Yeah, and even in science, in the last decade, they have been able to conduct telemetry experiments on the death of bodies. And in every one of them, regardless of the size or the age, they have been able to determine a weight that just magically just disappears. And it's very consistent. They don't know what the weight is. They can't define it. They can only describe it in the metrics that are used to find it, right? Which is just another telemetry set of frequencies that somebody has applied to whatever they're trying to observe.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings up the whole thing that throws science into a complete tizzy. This is where Schrodinger, Einstein, Whitehead, Keeley, Walter Russell, Nikola Tesla, all of these guys had been tuning into the concept of the frequencies of geometry. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
and this is information and knowledge that's been around for millennia. I posit that the whole concept of the Atlantean civilization is just one of many iterations that we probably have gone through in this human form here on Earth. Those guys, and you look at Edgar Casey's work, they talk about the incredible technology that these previous civilizations had. And Casey talks about the two-eyed stone that powered the Atlantean cities. And you can listen to that and you can dismiss it. You can go, well, that's interesting. How does it resonate and all that good stuff? But then you look at just the physical evidence that we have around the world today. When you look at Sacsayhuaman, you look at the buildings, the pyramids in the Saqqara in Egypt. You go to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. You look at the architecture and the creation of what these people did, and we can't, with our mechanical engineering capabilities and science today, we can't replicate that. Why? What is it that these ancient cultures and civilizations, what did they know that enabled them to create things that we, with our incredible advancement, cannot duplicate today? I posit that it's most likely sound and light type frequencies and energies, and an understanding of it that the guys I just mentioned were all onto. Tesla, Russell, Keeley,
Well, sound frequency
Schrodinger.
has been as we've talked about many times in this show, and I've talked about and written about, sound frequency
Exactly.
is a very, trying to make it brief, a very significant factor in all of that. I don't even know how to say what I'm trying to say and keep it in two words.
Well, but the point is that there was a different understanding of nature, of the world around us. There was a different comprehension and connection with the energy fields that make up everything that we are and that we experience. That definition of energy is what these other guys that I just mentioned and many others have been going on about for at least 100 to 150 years. That knowledge was suppressed through the science by the folks that had the money. And this is the point I was making the other night. They kept saying, follow the science. It's like, I'm a science guy. I love scientific. Give me some scientific method. I'm all over it. I like that first principles, methodical process approach to figuring something out with the data that you have. But I followed the science, and the first thing I found was money. And this is where the scientism that's going on right now is coming from. There is an overabundance of influence of the energy known as currency that's been injected into the scientific disciplines. And I mean, all you got to do is look at the pharma side, right? Health. These guys, I mean, Chris Rock said it a decade or two ago. The reason there's no cure for anything is there's no money in a cure. There's only money in a consumer. So I'm painting a broad brush across the scientific spectrum, which I'm sure Sterling is kind of bristling about. But my point is that the science that we have today is not the science we had a long time ago. What we had a long time ago is now being reintroduced. You're going to see stuff from Stephen Greer and Randall Carlson's already put his stuff out on Rogan with Graham Hancock. I mean, think about this. They have figured out how to take geometric forms and create and put them together in such a way that they create constant energy. Just the form. There's no moving parts. And you're able to tap into that energy and extract it for use as you please. And it's inexhaustible. That geometric form constantly creates a current and a field of energy that can be tapped into. Yeah. That's what they had probably back in Atlantis. That's probably what some of the sound technology was used to create these monuments that I mentioned. Otherwise, you look at it and all you got to do is look at Sacsayhuaman, and you've got blocks that have 20 plus angles in them fit perfectly together. It's like, excuse me, how did they do that? So that's my point, is that the science today is not the science we're going to have tomorrow. There's a whole bunch of problems with the science we got today. And that science, those problems are generated primarily by ideologies and money.
I agree with Chuck Thurston. He says, I still say we live in flatland. We believe what we know and have a hard time realizing something that doesn't fit that idea. And that's why I originally came up with the science almighty issue, and how science is sometimes a surrogate for religion, because it's like, look, I can't believe the bullshit of religion or whatever it might be. I'm not a spiritist, so I don't believe in that stuff. So I've got to focus all my energy on if it's facts, if it's this, if it's the scientific. And yet we find that science is mutable as well. There are certain things that don't change. I mean, but you get what I mean. So,
what do you think, Sterling?
Wow, so much. Again, we don't believe that 60% of these peer-reviewed journals were bogus. We don't believe it.
I didn't use the word bogus. I said they couldn't be replicated.
We don't believe that 60% of these studies can't be replicated. It was proven with new science, better science. It is science that disputes the old junk science that we thought was right. And scientists will never claim to know something for a fact. They'll never claim that their answers can't be questioned. And they'll never claim, that's why it is a theory. And that's why they publish it in a peer-reviewed journal. And it's not by belief and faith and religion that those things are eventually proven to be slightly inaccurate or highly inaccurate. It's through science. And it seems to me, with all due respect, that I've heard people here lean on science when it's convenient for them. Yeah. But what type of science can prove that Atlantis was real? Come on. What type of science can prove what type of energy sources that were on this fictitious place that we don't even know where it existed? What kind of science can lead you to faith and religion when in actuality, these things can't be demonstrated, and not even with junk science?
I can give you a dozen sources to go look and support everything that I just said. In fact, if you knew of Walter Russell, Nikola Tesla, Schrodinger, all the people that I'd mentioned, Keeley, I mean, these guys were scientists. Royal Rife, right? And all of the technology and all of the theories that they came up with were suppressed. And Tesla is the biggest example. And if you don't know the story of Tesla and Wardenclyffe and J.P. Morgan and what he was doing and how that all went down, then I highly recommend you go and take a look at it, because it's perfect examples of what I'm talking about.
If I looked at that and if you told me where to find it, assuming I haven't already seen it, would that prove that Atlantis is real?
I didn't say that Atlantis was real.
No. But you said you speculate about an energy source that they used on Atlantis, which therefore implies that Atlantis was a real place that we don't even know. It's kind of like that soul you asked me about, where it came from, and also that energy source that was on that place that we don't know where it was, that somebody said that they once went to. No, that's not science, bro.
Okay, that's your opinion.
I look at it like, was it Plato or was it Herodotus that wrote of the great labyrinth in Egypt that nobody's ever found? And so because it hasn't been found yet, it's pushed aside as this kind of apocryphal thing. It doesn't have substance to it because nobody's ever found it. Yet as soon as they find something that they think might be the labyrinth, when they find it, they'll be able, and then some people think they have found it. It's like saying we know of 3 pyramids in general common knowledge, yet there are something like over 65 different pyramids that are buried in the sand out in Egypt. So there are things that are as of yet undiscovered. that undiscovered country, as Shakespeare said, if you will. And it's like I always use this example when I run into people, totally different kind of discussion, but similar in nature. And I've talked about this before and used this example before here. But all the people that would look at the Jesus story and working on the history of Jesus, the historical Jesus versus the mythical Jesus versus the religious Jesus and so on. And there were many of the statements that were made. One of the issues was, and Pontius Pilate, we have no evidence that he ever existed. He is part of the Jesus myth, we were told, for centuries. That is, and so that was not the science, but there was no science that said he existed. There was no scientific method to prove that he was there, other than scant references. I mean, you had Josephus referenced him, but Josephus was considered to be not as reliable as we would have liked him to be, first century historian. But it wasn't until 1964, in the remains of what was Caesarea Philippi, they found an old staircase. When they were doing other types of archaeology, they find an old staircase, and one of the stones was a cornerstone with the inscription of Pontius Pilate. And it said, it called him Pontius Pilate Praefectus Judea, and talking about the Tiberium, whatever building that was that he was dedicating. And the stone had been reused. And so all of a sudden, what happened with that one discovery? Scientific discovery, might I add. Archaeology is science. But archaeology also requires intuition. And maybe that intuition, you could say, is what develops science. I think it's not, archaeology isn't pure mathematics. It's mathematics plus everything else it takes to find these things. But what did that do with that one discovery? It proved that what had been held as a myth was proven with one piece of stone this big. It suddenly proved that the man actually existed and that he actually was a prefect in the Roman Empire. And so science works there, but at the same time, it illustrates for me what happens when we say, like, and no disrespect to you, Sterling, when somebody's, and I say it myself, Atlantis? What's the proof that Atlantis existed? Well, we can say it didn't exist because we have no proof. But like the Pilate story, will there ever be proof? We don't know. We can't predict that. We can say we keep looking. There are proofs, things that add up. It's like with ghosts and ghost investigations. I have a ton of evidence, but is that evidence that will turn the scientific community into believing that I've experienced a ghost? No. I could maybe prove that I have picked up a voice, that I've had a conversation. I've got recordings.
Well, Scotty, to your point about the historical event that you just covered, Atlantis, the evidence for Atlantis, at least is what we have right now, is primarily through Plato and Solon and the Egyptian priests,
right?
So that is a historical record of mythology that has been handed down.
Yes.
It's exactly what you just described, right? There was the mythology, there was a story, and until the stone or the tablet was uncovered, it was considered BS or, a myth. It was somebody's story. So I think that we're going to find even more examples like that going forward, because the history, and that's one of the other disciplines of science and knowledge and academia that's been hijacked, our history is not what we have been told.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what we have been told, particularly in the last 100 years, that academia and the schooling system that we have has taught what it's taught. So to me, again, it's going to be a big reveal going forward. And Sterling, I have a question for you. It's kind of off topic, but do you know who Al Di Meola is?
No.
Okay. He's a world famous guitar player, one of my idols. You look just like him. So I highly recommend you go do a search on Al Di Meola, and look at some of particularly his younger years. He's about my age now, but
Whoever he is, he wished he looked like me.
I've said that many times. There's a lot of imposters, but there's only one.
Show me scientifically that he looks like that. I don't look better. And what I would say is that, just like what you said, there is evidence. There's not necessarily proof for these things.
Right.
Because
right.
Evidence can be shitty. I'm sorry to say that. It can be garbage.
A lot of it is.
I'm sorry. It can be junk. And so just like Pontius Pilate, as you said, Professor and Scotty, was considered to be a myth. I believe you said, Professor,
yes.
Until they found that stone, Professor. Then so should Atlantis be considered a myth. And that doesn't prove that by finding the stone, somehow that is an implication against science, because it's science that led us to the stone. So anytime we have a discovery like that, it's because of science, and it's because we used a more accurate scientific method. And that's not to tear down the science in general. It's just the science that we used back then is outdated, and we have.
Well, I would counter that with saying that I agree with your premise, but it wasn't science that found that stone. It was somebody digging around. It was somebody pursuing additional information. And a lot of times that information does not come without a scientific method. In fact, a lot of discoveries happen sans scientific methods, and because somebody went and looked for something, no matter what it is.
I'm sorry.
So I agree with you, but there is a variable there that I think you're probably not considering.
Okay, or perhaps I'm going to try not to take that offensively, and I'm just trying to assume that
it wasn't. I was just stating.
I'm sure it wasn't meant to be condescending, but perhaps there's something you haven't thought about as well. Yeah, or is that impossible?
I can't think of everything. I'm with Feynman. I have a whole bunch of things that I'm certain about, and some bunch of things I'm not certain about. And one thing I know for sure is I don't know everything about anything.
I'm glad to hear you say that. Because what I heard, and I might be wrong, was that it was an archaeological dig that discovered that stone. Yeah. So it was probably an archaeologist on site. Yeah. And that's a form of science. Yeah. And that's what led to the discovery.
Sterling, what do you do for a living? What's your background?
I'm a stand-up comedian.
Oh, really?
You're a stand-up comedian.
You've got now that I've listened to you for a few times, I can see you've got the chops. You've got the way to present yourself.
I'm not funny at all.
You're not funny?
No.
How long have you done this?
5 years.
Okay. And is that your primary path in your life career, or have you done other things? Or
my path is all encompassing, and it spreads all over the place. Just as the veins that run through your body. I'm into politics, I'm into science, I'm into medicine, I'm into not long lectures, I have to be honest.
And by the way, what I meant by the chops is maybe you don't think you see yourself as funny. I haven't heard you deliver a lot of comedy while we've had our talks. What I mean by that is you've got the ability to present what you're thinking. And usually a good comic is somebody who knows shit about something. You can't be a comedy and make jokes about something you know nothing about.
So as a comedian, what's your thoughts on Chappelle and Bill Burr? How do you rank those guys?
I think that Chappelle is definitely top 10 of all time. I don't listen to Bill Burr. I don't know his work. I don't necessarily think he's funny. From what I have heard, he is too angry and not funny. Chappelle is one of the GOATs. He did the best sketch comedy of all time, better than Saturday Night Live or any other sketch show that I've ever seen or that I'm convinced could ever be done. I think he killed it with the Prince skit, with that James Brown, with the Waffles playing basketball. It doesn't get better than that. The black guy who was born.
Oh, his Little Wayne thing. I mean, he does Little Wayne great.
Oh wait, I'm trying to remember that one. I don't remember that right off the bat. Well,
he's the one. He's real kind of crazy and coked up all the time. And
you're talking about. Gosh, not Little Wayne. He's a rapper. You're talking about Super Freak.
Okay, maybe that I had the name wrong. Maybe.
Well,
but, so
she's a super
so you
freak.
Like Chappelle? You think Bill Burr's kind of eh?
No, I think he's trash. And
What about Ron White?
No.
Not Ron White?
You know, I'll tell you one show that I watched that I really enjoyed, and I don't know that they've continued it. If they have, I haven't caught it. Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars Drinking Coffee.
Oh, that's great.
Have you seen that show?
Seinfeld, yeah. I watched every single episode of Seinfeld as a child, and that's really what inspired me. And for a long time,
oh, outstanding,
because Larry David, the executive producer, was in the background and he was never on stage and in front of the cameras, other than George Steinbrenner, which you never saw his face. Right. You really thought, and it gave me the impression that Jerry was the inspiration and the real genius. And I went and saw his stand-up twice, actually. And what I realized was, And then I watched Curb Your Enthusiasm, on HBO, which was by Larry David. And he started it, directed it, wrote it. And it became very evident and very clear that he's the genius there. And I would put him, well, it's hard to rank him because he doesn't do a lot of stand-up. And what I have seen him do, like on SNL, is not that great. But even what I saw Dave Chappelle do on SNL recently wasn't that great. And what I would say is that Ricky Gervais is number one in my book. I think he's the best. And then probably followed by Mitch Hedberg.
And then you look at all the stuff that Gervais does that's not really comedy. It's commentary.
Would you see his series Afterlife? Did you see his series Afterlife?
I did not see that.
Whoa.
I've heard good things about it.
That was some deep stuff. Funny, but totally different than his comedy.
Afterlife, Derek, extras. And a lot of people don't know this, embarrassing, and it's so embarrassing for us Americans. Y'all need to know this. Ricky Gervais wrote The Office. He was Michael Scott. Yeah. He played the office manager in the BBC version, which was far superior.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're talking about comedy, y'all.
About what?
About comedy.
Oh, comedy, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we used to do what we called ADHD radio. And that was literally what we did. And it was deliberate. Rocky Stucci and I did it all the time. It was like, we're talking about one thing. And then suddenly we'll veer off on, and about that bottle you're drinking from.
And you guys,
what about this thing with
bottles? You sucked me into some of those shows. And I'd just sit there and go, I don't know what.
No. We took advantage of Professor Bauer and we.
Yes, you did. And I enjoyed being used.
So, that's what we did. We just jumped from topic to topic. We did that to try to keep people's attention.
How much time do we have?
About 2 minutes.
I've been binging a lot of shows recently during COVID. Yeah.
Which one?
I've been binging a lot of shows during COVID.
Yeah.
And, one of them was my childhood favorite, Unsolved Mysteries.
Oh, yeah.
I love that show.
Watch it all the time when I was a kid.
Stack, back then and now they brought it back, and it's I love that show.
Yep.
Did you ever see In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy?
Yeah.
Unsolved Mysteries. Is there any other kind?
No. Mysteries by definition are unsolved.
What you saw is no longer a mystery now. Now what it becomes, I don't know. That's a mystery. Yeah?
Yeah.
But it's not a mystery. In one of these crimes, the law enforcement came out. They said that they were just one piece away from solving this unsolved mystery. Yeah, this crime.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't that every unsolved crime? Like if you think, like if it's a really good piece, you just need the one. The only way you could sound dumber is if you came out and said, "We're just 4 pieces away." From solving this crime.
I am 4 pieces away from solving this puzzle. I could see.
That's what I'll leave you with.
So I liked that. I did like Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of back in the 70s.
Oh yeah, and another one I highly recommend if you're not aware of is James Burke, and he was an English journalist.
Yes.
And he had several series. One of them called "The Day the Universe Changed." Another series is called Connections, and just a fascinating journey. His whole approach was taking different things that you didn't think were connected and showing these amazing connection paths. through all kinds of different things, technology, health,
Didn't he write
buildings.
I know he wrote
They're all on YouTube, and I highly recommend them. There's also some great lectures by James Burke that he's given here in the States over the last 20, 30 years that are exceptional and just giving you things to think about.
And you've given me many. I'd like to give you just a couple. I would like for you to check out the epistemology channels on YouTube, such as Peter Boghossian, Anthony Magnabasso, and Pine Creek, because the Flying Man experiment is Pine Creek. So I stole that from him, and I think that along with a couple of Modest Mouse albums, maybe the Moon in Antarctica, would serve you well.
Great. I appreciate
some of those things. I've heard some of those shows, not as a going steady concern, but I've heard bits and pieces.
Pine Creek's a genius. So, and the Flying Man experiment trumps all others. And if your goal was to change someone's mind, which maybe it shouldn't be, but I feel like a debate is pointless. It's boring as well. I don't watch them. I don't participate in them. But a thought experiment can change someone's mind. I've seen it happen.
I agree.
Completely agree.
We're going to leave it there because we're out of time.
Awesome.
So, Sterling, thank you for being here, brother. I appreciate your input. You too, Professor Bauer, as always.
My pleasure. Thank you, Sterling.
Thank you, Professor.
And you two have a good Thanksgiving. And I'll see you guys on Friday night.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good night. See you, Professor. All right, guys. That's it. That's all we got for tonight. We're done. I want you all to have a good Thanksgiving. And by the way, there's some of your comments I didn't answer because other people were talking. But I just want to say thanks to Patch for the birthday wishes. And Chuck, some good input there. And Sarah, some great input in the chat room. And some of these topics are things, Grumpy, even some of your comments were okay. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank you guys for giving me your time and making this show work and making it a lot of fun to do. I'll be honest. Sometimes when we get into the really thick, heavy conversations about things, it can be slow. I get that. Hopefully, we make it as exciting as we possibly can. At the same time, there are times where good comedy keeps things moving along at a nice clip if we can incorporate that into what we're doing. So I'm glad that you put up with the heavier shows where we talk pretty straight and heavy and solid, and shows where we do just the opposite. So I appreciate all of you. Remember, we're back on Friday night at same time, same channel. Then Sunday for It's Sunday. And same as usual. And I hope you all have a good Thanksgiving and eat a lot of turkey and stuff like that and do the thing. So we're going to get out of here now. You have a good night. Talk to you soon. Live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.